Well, I would like to use this design to show some of the drafting aids in gCADPlus in action that can help cut drafting time. I'll just zoom out a little. You can see the front design in front of the house here has been largely complete, and I'll just pan down now and we'll take a look at the rear garden. Well, the first thing I notice, and clearly we need to fix up this zone through here where there's a pond, and actually it needs a little bridge or some sort of pipe work going under here, but clearly the path is meant to cover the pond and water will pass under it. So clearly we've got to do a bit of editing in that zone. Well, what I do notice, and if I zoom in here, is a strange little drafting glitch there where what I think is a polyline, but let me select it, and the settings box tells me that it is a polyline, but it's actually a spline. I can recognize that it's a spline because of the little handle that allows me with a spline to control the beginning approach angle of a spline and the ending angle of a spline. Let me demonstrate. What I need to do is pick up the end of the spline, spin it around so that it gives me the direction that I really want without any overhang. So it's important to keep an eye on that. This one also might be a spline. Let's come down here. Yes, it is a spline because I can pick the handle and move things around. Well, in order to define the path, we need to join these polylines together and some other lines to form the closed polyline that we can fill or hatch. So I need to join this polyline or spline to the next one. If I pick this line through here, you can see its segment's too long. We can't join these. We need a short line between those two endpoints. Now you could use the break command, and let me try that. So modify and break. The first prompt says pick in this case the line you want to break, and the first break point I'll choose an intersection and another intersection there. That cuts it out, and we then need to draw a line in using an endpoint to an endpoint, being a little careful when you're working to make sure that you know which layer you are operating on. Some people, to save time, would simply draw that line over the top of the existing one, but I can now select what in fact are two splines and a line and right click and join them. But it says I can't join those objects, and the reason it can't join them is that these two have already had some fitting applied to them. You could join them in this way by saying we'll turn those back to lines and arcs and then pick that one, and we could then right click and the join will work. I'm not going to do that because that's going to take an awful lot of extra drafting time, and remember that what we're trying to do is indicate to the viewer that this is a path, and for my mind getting involved in this sort of work now means that I'm doing far too much drafting time. Well, I decided to take a simpler approach and just use the line thickness to indicate the edges of the path. I drew a polyline over what will be a mini bridge area, or pipes might be used to go underground, but we need to convey to the client that the pond goes underneath the path. So I've just done a polyline and hatched it. There's the polyline and there's the hatch over the top. So that, to me, that clearly indicates that some work will need to be done over the path, and I would rely on labeling, on text labeling now, to indicate, put some text in, just saying simply path. And I think the text here is just a little large, and its height is 2.5. We try, this happens to be a US example, but we try using a fixed series of steps according to the drafting code, and in the metric area you might use say 1.8, 2.5, 3.5 and 5. So let's just come back here to 1.8, and now that will reduce the height of that text just a little, and it won't be until we get out to a layout page where we can see that that text is appropriate. But I'd be using some leaders and some labels rather similar to that which we've done in the front here. Existing draftway and entrance. Our text needs to be a little smaller than that. That height is 2, so I think 1.8 is going to work reasonably well. Well, I may have mentioned previously that when I was working in this area where the little miniature bridge is, gCADPlus was having trouble finding the appropriate OSNAP points. If I click on this shape line through here, it's in fact a spline. We recognize that because the little handle at the end shows when it's selected. Interestingly, if you change its fit type to lines and arcs and then back to the quadratic function to get the same fitting curve, the spline little handle then disappears. But I digress. If I pick this line here, notice that how many vertices there are, and gCADPlus is searching all the way through every one of those vertices when you are working in an area with a line such as that. And here's another normal spline, and here's another shape that looks to be a spline but which consists of literally hundreds of individual vertices. What causes those is, let me set my drawing colour to 30 and my line weight to say 5, and I'll draw a spline. So we start the point, we start moving away, and as we draw, the spline bends beautifully around with us, and we're able to create all sorts of nice shapes. We then hit enter to finish, and we have to set the angle of the tangent to the line there, and do the same at this point, and there's our spline. When we pick it, we had, in our case, 5 or 6 vertices, but if we select it and right click and explode, now we get far too many control points. So if you're going to use splines, best to leave them as is rather than explode them. Let's delete it. So there's still some work to do, I think, to improve the definition of the little pond. Well, the final drafting tip that I'd like to demonstrate is that if I wanted to draw a polyline around this path, I would need this little segment through here. And if I try and pick a line there, it's selecting the polyline to the right hand side. If I drag across here and go to all, we have 2 entities now selected, the polyline which is filled and on top, and the line which is underneath. If you want to select it, do use this filtering system and select a line. It's now selected, and then we can use tools and draw order and bring it to the front, and there we are. We can now pick it. So you can grab a series of entities such as this. I'll get the hatching and the line. So I think it's a polyline, or is it a line now? Still a line. So the polyline is the filled one, the hatching is the hatching to the right, and line is the one we want, and we use tools, draw order, and we bring it to the front. Once that's done, we can select it easily. So I hope some of those little tips assist in your drafting and make things a little easier.